Hi guys, this is John Edward Willie and this is Circle 8, and this morning at 8 a.m. I am discussing my workout that I just did. I'm sure you can tell, but I'm feeling really good, and this is a common thing for me. But I remembered this morning a friend who had once told me that I should record videos after I work out. You know, there is something to be said for the kind of thoughts that come during a workout, and there's certainly something to be said for what might be said to others in regards to inspiring them or making them think twice about working out. And yet it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I would even consider, taking photographs or taking any kind of video whatsoever, because for the longest time it was assumed to be by me something that one did without speaking about. I think I've mentioned in my earlier videos that for a lot of people, there's something silly about talking about what you do. And like I had mentioned, just as an example, the religious believer who doesn't talk about religion but still goes to church, and you can sort of tell by the way they carry themselves that there's something they believe, but they're not like everyone else insofar as they're not just blabbing and telling everyone about everything that they do. I don't know what it is about me, but I've often found it a little bit strange to talk about everything that I do. You know what I mean? Like, there's a sense in which I'm willing and ready and excited to talk about almost anything, but certainly a certain amount of privacy should remain. And if not privacy, isn't there something to be said for doing things without talking about it or making it about yourself? Like, isn't there something really narcissistic about talking about yourself or drawing attention to yourself after working out? I mean, how absurd, And yet here I am talking about the fact that I just did a workout, and I did it immediately after waking up, and I'm feeling electric, and I don't even know what to say. So I guess my question is, what do people talk about when they're talking about working out? That's my question. Like, we exchange information in terms of like what we do and our exercises and what our fitness goals are. But I mean, for God's sakes, how long can you talk about that? It's not that I don't talk about exercise or that I don't find it to be extremely fascinating, which I do. I'm sure you can tell that, in fact, it's integral to who I am. I think about exercise and fitness and health outside of the gym, including walking and running and eating healthy as an all-inclusive package. And I think one thing that I could say perhaps is that it doesn't have to do with the obvious. Like, there is a sense in which, you're working out because you want to look better and you want to feel better and you want to have a longer life so that you have time to be happy and enjoy the experiences that you have and to be able to have time with your friends and family. But that's like, from a philosophical point of view, that's like silly. I mean, it would be silly to put in the kind of work that one does just to have that kind of effect. I think the worth is well worth it. I think that's obvious. I'm one of those guys. I love fitness, but I've never assumed that anyone else would care or would want to exercise or that it would mean anything to them. So I've never thought twice about it. I've never been one to advocate it or to recommend it to anyone. And yet I think that there's a sense in which I mean, not a sense, but there's a literal truth that I would never not let myself do this. For me, it's a standard. And so I think that there's an underlying principle, which is that you can like hold yourself to certain standards, and certain expectations. Like, I have a certain baseline idea in terms of like where I want to be in terms of health and fitness, and it's nothing over the top. It's really just to ensure that everything else that I can do with my writing and my thinking and everything I'm pursuing can function at its highest level. Like, there's a sense in which you holistically bring your life into a crystallized, fierce, precise point when you work out. And it's hard to put into words, but I know that if you do it yourself, you'll experience something like it. And yet it's not a solution. I'm not proposing exercise and fitness as some kind of solution, because again, I step back and I don't really think it works that way. I think there's something else going on. And I know that I'm basically giving the worst fitness video ever. I'm making the worst fitness video ever because I have very different kind of thoughts about exercise and what it means. And I guess that when I talk about working out, like what I'm talking about is this interior space that locks into my psyche. I know that's misspoken. It's a physical experience that tightens my cognitive capacities. And I hate to use such fancy words, but I'm trying to explain exactly why it is that it's both so important, so fundamental, and cannot be spoken about. I mean, how can something be so beautiful, you know, and so powerful, and yet on a certain level, you should just do it and not think about it? Because when we create a culture around fitness, in other words, when you create an identity and a culture, and as I go on in these videos, you'll find that these words identity and culture have sort of negative terms for a negative connotation, because what I think of identity and culture as being like this fat, like this thing that grows around the act, that clogs it up and makes it unworthy and undoable on a certain level. In other words, I'm not a big fan of fitness culture, and I'm not a big fan of fitness identities. And maybe it's because of my age, because of where I come from, because I've already lived through all of that. You know, I've lived through all of that on every level in terms of pursuing it for, you could say, the wrong reasons. And so, like, for instance, as a guy, I know that girls don't care about muscles or fitness per se. They're not even really attracted to that. And I mean, they are, but there's a sense in which one thing I've observed in being in gyms and being around a lot of guys who work out a lot is the frustration and like the insanity that it creates in men when they realize that their little workouts and their little exercises aren't having the effect that they want it to have. And so I think that that's a good indicator of the limits of identity. And the fitness culture is sort of like that fitness, the industry that has grown up around it. And the industry in itself is something you can see in the clothes that we wear when we're in our gym, even with the videos that we're creating. And so it's not that this is bad in itself, but that it creates a barrier. And not only that, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make at the end here is that if you think about working out, you won't do it. Like, if you make it into a self-conscious activity and you tell people about it, it's not exactly going to help you. I mean, maybe that's just my notion, but I think it comes from a sort of special place within. And maybe I'm making it more than it needs to be, but I think that everyone else is making it into more than it needs to be, because like, working out is the equivalent of building a house, except that you have to keep building it, you know? And so why are you building a house? Is it for the satisfaction of the house, or are you building a home? Like, if a house is something that's built in order to create the conditions for a home, an interior life, a world that isn't merely just made of wood and metal, well then what is working out? If you're not, you know, if you're not just getting muscular, if you're not just getting healthy, what does it mean to build a body? Like, how do you build a body like someone would build a home? And what is the body? You know, I don't think the body and the brain are separate. I think that the body and the brain are the same thing. So that's a key. And when you exercise your body, you're effectively exercising that brain, but not in the reductive, simplistic way that a lot of people want to think about this as being. It's much more of a, I hate to use the word, but holistic endeavor, because ultimately you're creating a home within which you can live. And that's why I like to work out early in the day, because the rest of my day will be lived within this powerful state of mind that is created by living in a way that is conducive to life itself. And so I guess this is my first ever fitness video. Maybe one of these days I'll get the courage to bring the camera into the gym, in the sense that I'll be able to record my workouts. I've recorded some of my stretches and some of my thoughts about fitness, but I've yet to record the inner workings of what it is that I do and what I think, not just to promote myself in some way, but to get feedback from other people, because my workouts and my fitness plan has really evolved over time because I've taken in huge amounts of information from all kinds of people. I've always paid attention to all kinds of personal trainers and physical therapists and fitness gurus, and I think that there's quite a bit that can be learned, but there's also, honestly, 95% of it is really bullshit. So there's a sense in which not only that, but within that 5% that is worthwhile, like really 1% of that is going to work for your specific needs. And so there's a sense in which you have to actively work to ensure that you're creating a plan based on all this information that works for you specifically. And in my experience, that's the most difficult thing of all to do in fitness, is to create a lifelong trainee, to create someone who's going to go on and learn fitness on their own, so that they're not relying on trainers or relying on information, but can actively learn how to create a fitness program that fits their specific needs and desires. And so I guess that's a part of what I have done for myself, and I think it's nearly impossible even to do for yourself, let alone to think for other people. But maybe others can help me think about myself by giving me feedback. So once again, I'm sorry for speaking so much, even though this has only been about 10 or 11 minutes. I'm trying to get used to recording shorter videos, and so maybe this is a perfect example of a failing but honorable attempt at describing what is most impossible for me to describe, which is what it is that I talk about when I talk about working out.